Alright, Karina baby, for the 6th, we have counting letters. Let's see how this one goes. Counting letters. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. How many insects can you see? But we start at the number line 0, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 insects and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pebbles. So there's 7 insects though. H, I, J, K. Wait, let's start over. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. How many insects can you see? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. H, I, J, K, L, M, N. How many women and how many men? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How many women are there, though? There are 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so there's 7 actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And how many men? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 men and 3 women. O, P, Q, R, S, T, U. How many sailors in the crew? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. B, W, X, Y, Z comes last. How many cats will you please tell me? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. There are 5 cats. So how many, counting letters, how many letters are there in total? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, or 22, 23, 24, 25. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. And then the last comes Z. 26. There are 26 letters in the ABCs. Yay! You counted with me. Alright, so let's move on to our Little Mermaid story that I was so tired yesterday I couldn't get through. Alright. Okay. Behind it lay her house in the midst of a strange-looking forest. All the trees and bushes were Pelapis, half animals and half plants. They looked like hundred-headed snakes growing out of the ground. The branches were long, slimy arms with slithery, worm-like fingers, moving joint by joint from the root up to the very tip. They twined around anything they could reach, never loosening their grip. Horror-stricken, the little mermaid stopped on the edge of this forest. Her heart beat faster with fear, and she almost turned back. But then she thought of the prince and of the human soul, and her courage returned. She bound her long flowing hair tightly around her head, so that the pelvis might not seize her by it. She folded her arms closely across her breast and darted off as a fish darts through the water. In among the hedges, Pulpus, which stretched out their supple arms and fingers to catch her. She saw how each of them clung tightly to something it had caught. People who had perished at sea and sank down to the bottom were visible as white human bones among the arms of the Pulpus. The Pulpus also catched ships, robbers seized chests, and skeletons of land animals. And most horrible of all, she even saw the little mermaid whom they had caught and strangled. She came next to the great slimy clearing in the forest, where big fat water snakes withered and rolled, showing their ugly yellowish white bellies. In the center of the clearing was a house built out of bones and shipwrecked men. There at the sea witch, letting the toad feed out of her mouth, exactly as we let the carny eat sugar. She called the hideous fat water snake her little chickens and let them creep and crawl over her great spongy bosom. "I know what you want," said the sea witch. "It is very foolish of you, for it will bring trouble upon you, my poor little one, my pretty little one. But all the same you shall have your way. You want to get rid of your fishtail and to have 2 bits of stumps to walk with instead, like the people of the earth, so that the young prince will fall in love with you, and you will win both him and an immortal soul." Here the witch let out a laugh so loud and so ghostly that the toad and the snake she had been fondling trembled down to the ground, where they lie wallowing about. "You have just come in time," said the witch. "Had you waited until sunrise tomorrow, I could not have helped you for a whole year. I am going to brew a potion for you. Before the sun sets, you must swim to land with it. Sit down on the shore and drink it. Then your tail will part into 2 and shrink, and what the people of the earth call pretty legs, but it will hurt as if a sharp sword were cutting through you. Everybody who sees you will say that you are the prettiest human being they have ever seen. You are to keep your gliding motion. No dancer will be able to move as gracefully as you. But at every step, it will feel as if you were treading on sharp-edged knives, so sharp that your feet will seem to be bleeding." She paused for a moment, then went on. "If you can bear all this, I shall be able to help you." "I can," said the little mermaid in a quivering voice. And she thought of the prince and of winning an immortal soul. "But remember," said the witch, "once you have taken human shape, you can never become a mermaid again. You can never return to your father's palace, and if you do not win the love of the prince so that for your sake he forgets father and mother and clings to you with heart and soul, and lets the monk join your hands, making you man and wife, then you will not win an immortal soul. On the very morning after he has married someone else, your heart will break, and you will become the foam of the sea. I am willing, said the little mermaid, who was as pale as death. But you will also have to pay me, said the witch. And it is not a trifle that I require. You have the most beautiful voice of anyone down here in the depths of the sea. You think that you will be able to charm the prince with it, but you must give that voice to me. I want the best thing you possess in exchange for my precious potion. I must drop some of my own blood into it so that the draught may be as sharp as two-edged swords. But if you take my voice, said the little mermaid, what shall I have left? Your beautiful form, said the witch, your gliding motion, and your elegant eyes. They will be enough for you to belige any human heart. Well, she went on after a moment, have you lost your courage? Put on your little tongue, and I will cut it out. Put out your little tongue, and I will cut it out, and take it as my payment, and you shall have the potent draught in return. So be it, said the little mermaid, and the witch put her cauldron on fire and brewed the magic draught. Cleanliness is a good thing, she said, and she scourned out of the cauldron with the snake that she had tied up into a knot. Then she made a cut in her finger and let her black blood drip into the cauldron. The witch kept on throwing in different ingredients, and when the mixture finally started to boil and bubble, it sounded like a crocodile sobbing. The steam coming from the cauldron shaped itself into the most terrifying and horrible form. When at last the potion was ready, it looked as clear as the clearest water. There you are, said the witch, and she cut out the tongue of the little mermaid. Now she had become mute, and could neither sing nor speak. If the pulpris could catch you when you are on your way back through my forest, said the witch, just throw one little drop of this draught upon each of them, and their arms and fingers will scatter into 1,000 pieces. But there was no need for the little mermaid to do that. The pulpis shrank back in terror when they saw the shining potion gleaming in her hand, like a twinkling star. Thus she passed quickly through the forest, the bog, and the roaring whirlpools. She could see her father's palace. The torches had been extinguished, and the great ballroom. Her family was probably all asleep, but she had not the courage to approach them now that she was mute and was leaving them forever. It seemed as if her heart was going to break with sorrow. She strolled into the garden, picked one flower from each of her sister's flower beds, blew 1,000 kisses towards her home, and rose up through the deep blue sea. It was not yet sunrise when she saw the prince's palace and went up the stately marble steps. The moon was still shining beautifully clear, and the little mermaid drank the sharp, burning draught given her by the witch, and she felt as if the two-edged sword had cut through her delicate body. She swooned with agony, and lay as if she were dead. When the sun spread into rays over the sea, she awoke and felt a stinging pain. But before her stood a handsome young prince. He fixed her coal-black eyes upon he fixed his coal-black eyes upon her, and under his gaze she lowered her eyes and saw that her fishtail had gone, and that she had the prettiest pair of white legs any girl could desire. But her body was naked, and she veiled herself with her long thick hair. The prince asked who she was and how she had come there. And she looked up at him with her dark blue eyes, so mild and yet so full of sadness, for she could not speak. Then he took her by the hand and led her into the palace. As the witch had foretold, she seemed at each step to be treading on sharp knives and poisoned daggers. But she bore the pain gladly. Led by the prince, she moved lightly as a bubble, and he and everyone else marveled at her graceful gliding motion. They clad her in costly robes of silk and muslin. She was the fairest of all in the palace, but she was mute and could neither speak nor sing. Beautiful slave girls dressed in silk and gold come from them and sang for the prince and his royal parents. One of them sang more delightfully than any of the others, and the prince clapped his hands and smiled at her, which saddened the little mermaid, for she knew that she herself used to sing far more beautifully. And she thought of, if he only knew that I gave away my voice forever in order to be with him. The slave girls now danced gracefully to the accompaniment of the loveliest music imaginable. And then the little mermaid lifted her pretty white arms and, raising on the tips of her toes, fluttered around the floor, dancing as no one had ever danced before. With each of her movements, her beauty became more and more elegant, and her eyes spoke more deeply into the heart than the song of the slave girls. Everyone was enchanted, especially the prince, who called her his own little fondling. And she danced again and again, through every time her foot touched the ground. It seems as to her as if she were treading on sharp knives. The prince said that she must always remain with him, and she was allowed to sleep in the velvet cushion outside his door. He had a page's dress made for her so that she might accompany him on horseback. They rode through the fairest woods, where the green boughs brushed her shoulders, and the little birds sang hidden among the leaves. She climbed the highest mountains in the kingdom with the prince, and though her delicate feet bled so that even the others in the group with them noticed it, she only laughed and followed him until she could see the clouds moving far below them like flocks of birds on their way to distant lands. At night, when the others were asleep in the prince's palace, she would go out onto the broad marble steps and cool her burning feet in the cool sea water. And then she would think of her dear ones in the depths of the sea. One night her sisters appeared arm in arm, singing mournful songs as they swam along. She beckoned to them as they recognized her, and told her how much she had grieved them all. They visited the little mermaid every night after that, and once in the far, far distance she saw her old grandmother, who had not been above the water for many years, and the Sea King with his crown upon his head. They stretched out their hands towards her, but did not venture so near the land as her sisters. Day by day she grew dearer to the prince. He loved her as the love of a good child, but he had not thought of making her his queen. Yet his wife, sh- Yet his wife she must be, or she could never win an immortal soul. She would become merely a cloud of foam on the sea the morning after he wed another. Am I not dearer to you than anyone else? Her eyes seemed to ask. When he took her in his arms and kissed her fair brow, yes, you are the dearest of all to me, said the prince, for you have the kindest heart of all. You are more devoted to me than anyone else, and you look like a young girl whom I once knew, but whom I shall probably never see again. I was on board a ship which was wrecked. The waves carried me ashore near a holy temple, where a group of young girl maidens were serving. The youngest of them found me and saved my life. I saw her but twice. She is the only one in the world I could ever love. But you look so much like her that you almost take the place of her image in my heart. She belongs to that holy temple, and therefore destiny sent you to me. We will never part. Alas, he does not know that I saved his life, thought the little mermaid. It was I who carried him over the water to the forest where the temple stands. I stayed hidden in the foam to see if anyone would come. I saw the pretty maiden whom he loves better than me, and she gave a deep sigh, for as a mermaid she had no tears. The maiden belongs to the holy temple. He tells me she will never come out into the world, so they will never meet again. I am with him. I see him every day. I will cherish him, love him, and give up my life to him. But soon it was rumored that the prince was going to marry the beautiful daughter of the neighboring kingdom, and that was why he was fitting out such a splendid ship. They said that the prince was paying a state visit to the country of that king, but the real reason was to see the king's daughter. He was to have a great entourage with them. The little mermaid shook her head and laughed, for she knew the prince thoughts far better than anyone else. I must go away, he had said to her. I must and see the beautiful princess. My parents insist upon it, but they will not compel me to bring her home as my bride. I cannot love her. She is not like the beautiful maiden in the temple, or as you are. If I ever had a choice of bride, I would sooner choose you, my dear mute fondling with the sparkling eyes. And he kissed her red lips, playing with her long hair, and laid his hand on her heart, so that she dreamed of human happiness and an immortal soul. I hope you are not afraid of the sea, my poor mute child, he said, when they stood on the splendid ship which was to carry him to the country of the neighboring king. Then he told her of storm and calm at seas, of strange fishes in the depths of the ocean, and what divers had seen down there. And she smiled as his descriptions, for she knew more than anyone else about the bottom of the sea. In the moonlit nights, when all were asleep except the helmsman at the wheel, she sat by the rail, and gazing down through the water, she fancied she could see her father's palace. On the top stood her old grandmother, with a silver crown on her head, gazing at the keel of the ship through the fast-flowing current. Then her sisters came up above the water and looked at her with deep sorrow in the eyes, and wrung the right hands. So they went like this to her. They were wringing their hands at her, right? She beckoned to them, smiling, and tried to make them understand that she was well and happy. But when the cabin boy came towards her, her sisters dived down again. So he felt quite certain that the gleam of the white he had seen was nothing but foam. Next morning the ship sailed into the harbor of the neighboring king's magnificent city. All the church bells rang, and from the tall tower trumpets were blown, while the soldiers stood at attention, with flying colors and glimmering bayonets. Each day brought new festivities, balls and parties were given all the time, but the princess had not yet arrived. People said she was being brought up in the holy temple, where she was learning every royal accomplishment. At last she appeared on the scene. The little mermaid waited anxiously to see her beauty, and she had to admit that she had never seen a more graceful form. The princess' skin was fine and delicate, and behind the long dark eyelashes smiled a pair of dark blue eyes, full of devotion. "It is you who saved me when I lie in a corpse on the shore," said the prince, and he clasped his blushing bride-to-be in his arms. "Oh, I am more than happy," he said to the little mermaid. "My dearest wish, the thing I could never dare to hope for, has been granted me. You will rejoice in my happiness, for you are more devoted to me than anyone else." Then the little mermaid kissed his hand, and already his heart seemed to be breaking. And already her heart seemed to be breaking. The morning after his wedding would bring death to her and change her to foam on the sea. All the church bells rang out, towards heralds rope about the streets, and proclaimed the betrothal, that they were to be married. On every altar fragrant oil was burning in costly silver lamps. The priests swung their censers, and brides and bridegrooms joined hands and received the bishop's blessing. The little mermaid, clad all in silk and gold, was holding the bride's train, but her ears heard nothing of the festive music. Her eyes saw nothing of the holy ceremony. She thought of the last night she had to live, and of all she had lost in this world. That very evening, bride and bridegroom went on board the ship. Cannons were fired, banners fluttered in the wind, and in the middle of the ship a royal tent of gold and purple was set up, furnished with great sumptuous cushions, on which the bridal couple were to sleep in a calm, cool night. The sails swelled out in the breeze, and the ship glided smoothing and without any prescribable motion over the limpid sea. When it grew dark, colored lanterns were lighted, and the sailors danced merry dancers on the deck. The little mermaid could not help thinking of the first time she rose to the surface of the sea and saw a similar sight of splendor and joy. Light and a sorrow is full flight, she joined in the dance, and to the sound of cheers and shouting dancers, as she had never danced before. Her delicate feet seemed to be cut by sharp knives, but the anguish of her heart was so great that she did not feel the pain. She knew only that this was the last evening she was ever to see the prince, for whom she has forsaken her people and her home, had given up her beautiful voice to the sea witch, and had daily suffering untold agony. Well, he remained unaware of it all. The gaiety and merriment lasted until long past midnight, and the little mermaid laughed and danced like the others. But with the thought of death in her heart, the prince kissed her beautiful bride, and she played with his black hair. Wait. Like the others, but with the thought of death in her heart, the prince kissed his beautiful bride, and she played with his black hair. And arm in arm they went to rest in the splendid tent. A hush and silence fell upon the ship. Only the helm stood at the wheel. The little mermaid laid her white arms on the rail and gazed towards the east, waiting to see the red tinge of the dawn. The first rays of the sun she knew would not kill her. She saw her sisters rise out of the sea. They were pale like her. Their long, beautiful hair no longer fluttered in the wind. It had all been cut off. We have given it to the witch so that she may give you help and save you from dying before dawn. She has given us a knife. Look, here it is. Do you see its sharp edge? Before the sun rises, you must plunge it into the prince's heart. And when his warm blood splashes over your feet, they will grow into a fish's tail, and you will become a mermaid again. You will be able to come down to us in the water and live your 300 years before you turn into dead salt sea foam. Make haste. Either he or you must die before the sun rises. Our old grandmother has been mourning till her white hair has fallen out as ours fell under the witch's scissors. Kill the prince and come back. Make haste. Do you see that red streak in the sea? In a few moments the sun will rise, and you must die. Having said this, they uttered a strange deep sigh and disappeared in the waves. The little mermaid drew back the purple curtain of the tent and saw the beautiful bride sleeping with her head on the prince's breast. She bent down and kissed him on his fair brow. Then she looked up at the sky, where the first faint flash of dawn became brighter and brighter. She looked at the sharp knife and again fixed her eyes on the prince, whom in his sleep was murmuring the name of his bride. She and only she was in his thoughts. The knife quivered in the mermaid's hand, but then she flung it far out into the waves. They gleamed red where it fell. It seemed as if drops of blood were bubbling up through the water. Once more she looked with dimming eyes upon the prince. Then she threw herself from the ship into the water, and felt her body dissolving into foam. The sun rose up of the sea. Its rays fell mild and warm upon the death-cold sea foam, and the little mermaid felt not the hand of death. She saw the bright sun, and above her floating hundreds of beautiful ethereal beings, so transparent, ethereal beings, so transparent that through them she could see the white sails of the ship and the rosy clouds of the sky. Their voices were music, but she, unearthly, that no human ear could grasp it, just as no human eye could see their form. Without wings, they floated by their own lightning through the air. The little mermaid saw that she, too, had a body like theirs, and that it was gradually freeing itself more and more from the foam. Towards whom am I floating? She asked, and her voice sounded like that of the other being, so ethereal that no earthly music could possibly render it. To the daughters of the air, answered the others. The mermaid has no immortal soul, and can never gain one unless she wins the love of a human being. Her eternal life depends upon a power outside of herself. The daughters of the air have no immortal souls either, but they can gain one by their good deeds. We fly to the hot countries where the torrid air of partials kills men. We bring cold breeze to them. We spread the fragments of flowers through the air and send them to the solace and send to them solace and healing. When we have tried for 300 years to do all the good we can, we receive an immortal soul and share in the everlasting happiness of mankind. You, poor little mermaid, have tried with your whole heart to do the same. By your sacrificing and by your courage in enduring them, you have raised yourself into the world of the spirits of the air, and now you can gain an immortal soul by doing good deeds accomplished in the centuries of 300 years. The little mermaid raised her translucent arms around God's sun. Arms towards God's sun. And for the first time she felt tears in her eyes. Noise and bustle had started again on the ship. She saw the prince and his beautiful wife searching for her. Then they gazed with sorrow in their hearts at the bubbling foam, as if they knew that she had thrown herself into the waves. Invisible by now, the little mermaid kissed the bride on her forehead, smiled at the prince, and soared with the other children of the air towards the rose-colored clouds floating through space. In this way, we shall float into the heavenly kingdom in 300 years. We may even reach it sooner, whispered one of them. Invisibly we float into the house of human beings where there are children, and for every day in which we find a good child who brings joy to his parents and deserves their love, one time of probation is shortened by God. The child is unaware of it when we float through the room, and if we smile at him in our joy, 1 year has been taken from the 300 years. But if we see a bad and naughty child, then we must weep tears of sorrow over them, and every tear adds 1 day to our time of probation. Alright, baby, that was The Little Mermaid. It's completely different than the movie. That's a very good book, though. She sacrificed her entire life for the man that she loves. A lot of women do that, honey. A lot of women are willing to give up everything that they have because they love somebody. Is it right? Is it wrong? And this little mermaid lost her entire life. She lost her family. She lost her prince. She lost everything, right? But she did the right thing. Really, the right thing would have been for her to stay home. Not being going after that prince. But, alright, baby. We do crazy things when we're in love, right? It's crazy. That's when we're in love, we just love somebody and we'll give up everything for them. She walked around feeling the pain of walking around every single second, but she still wanted to walk around with her prince. Alright, Karina, baby, let's do... The Grand Old Duke of York had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill, and then he marched them down again. And when they were up, And when they were down, they were down. And when they were only halfway up, they were neither up nor down. Let's do Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious was that grace thus far, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, snares, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Let's do Lila Tove, and good night to you. Lila Tove, may your dreams come true. We sing Lila Tove, may Israel protect you throughout the night until we reach the morning light. Karina, baby, I love you and I miss you and I can't wait to see you. I can't wait to see you, baby. I love you so incredibly much. You have no idea. Much like the Little Mermaid, mamas will give up everything for the babies that they make and that they love. To be with them, mama just wants her life back. I just miss you, baby. You're so much a part of just who I am, just my life. It's just what it is. I just miss you and I love you. Can't wait to see you.